The affordable EVs are here. Well, relatively, these two are the most affordable EVs in the country today, electric cars, and they can't be more different from each other. The Tiago EV, it is an ICE car that has been adapted to an electric drivetrain. The MG Comet, it is a born electric car. Now, these two cars, they definitely go head to head in the entry-level electric car segment. And the question we're trying to answer here today is, which of these two should you get? Should you be putting your money on a Tata Tiago EV or an MG Comet? Watch this video to find out. But before we do that, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the Evo India channel, and leave a comment down below. Which of these two cars do you think should be in your garage? The first thing we need to talk about is their styling, and there's no denying that the MG Comet looks very different from everything else on our road. First of all, it's tiny, just 2.9 meters long. It's got only 2 doors. It's very narrow, small wheels. It really takes that born electric platform and maximizes the use of it for space on the inside and a compact size on the outside. In terms of styling, very unconventional, but it definitely draws in eyeballs. Now, the second car on test, Tiago EV. This looks very similar to a conventional Tiago with a few small changes for the EV. So you get a different grille, you get these blue accents, you get EV badges, you get different wheels. So overall, it's very similar to the standard Tiago and doesn't grab as many eyeballs as this. It's larger, it has more presence, that's for sure, but this is the car that is grabbing eyeballs and is making conversations. The first question we're trying to answer is, how expensive do these cars feel? Does the Tiago EV feel premium? The first point I'd like to make is that it is based on the regular Tiago. So there are a lot of constraints in terms of what Tata can do to this cabin. The tech on offer, you've got a very basic digital display. Though it offers a fair amount of information in there, it's not the most neatly designed and not the most premium feeling. You've got a touchscreen infotainment system here that supports wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. But again, it's not the highest quality. The touch sensitivity isn't the greatest and it is a little small. The materials on the inside, they're hard plastics. That's par for the course in this segment, but it doesn't do anything to wow you. The Tiago EV, however, has had a few upgrades over the regular Tiago to make it more upmarket, I would say. So you've got stuff like leatherette seats, you've got automatic climate control, you've got auto headlamps, auto wipers. Those are fairly big changes to the standard Tiago to make the Tiago EV feel a lot more expensive. You've also got a Harman sound system in here to uplift the experience in the cabin. So overall, I'd say that this is a lot better than the standard Tiago, but let's see what it's like compared to the Comet. When you step from the Tiago into the MG Comet, you'll notice immediately that the cabin is a lot livelier and a lot more upmarket. And I think the main reason for that are the twin screens. They're crisp, they're high res, they look really, really nice, and they really uplift the cabin. You've got one screen for your instrument cluster, one screen for your infotainment system. Infotainment system also accepts wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, so that's an added benefit there. And this really uplifts the cabin. Another thing is the way the interiors are designed and the material selection used. So you've got a fabric finish over here, you've got this glossy white and silver plastic all across the dashboard. You do have some hard plastics, but the stuff that you touch is generally high quality. Even on the steering wheel controls, they've got this iPod-like design and are in glossy plastic. Feels very nice. You've got your gear selector down here. This is actually very similar to the Tiago, and it feels a little more taut in how its controls are. You've got only 2 windows, so you've got 2 window switches over here, again finished in silver. You've got a lot of space also in the front because this is a born electric platform. In front of me, in front of this center console, is just empty, and that's a lot of room for your legs and for your passengers' legs. In terms of space, it's a little cramped in terms of width because the seats are really close together and the door is really close to you as well. That's the only real criticism of this cabin. And also the fact that this upholstery, it's this white color which gets dirty very easily in our conditions. This car's done only 2,500 kilometers and already you can see brown stains on the seats. You can see this armrest is really dirty. It's not impossible to maintain, but it is harder to maintain in Indian conditions. But overall, the cabin of the MG Comet does feel really nice. The next question we're trying to answer is backseat space. Immediately, you'll notice the Tiago has something that the MG doesn't have, and that is rear doors. Getting into the rear is obviously much easier. So you climb inside, and once you're inside, you'll notice you have a good amount of room. Good knee room, good headroom. I'm fairly comfortable in here. I can also put my feet underneath the driver's seat and tuck them in. Good amount of thigh support. The Tiago EV also has the distinction of being the only 5-seater in this test. So you can seat 3 people in the back row without trouble. In terms of headrest, there's no movable headrest. You've got fixed headrest. That's similar to what you get in that car. But this back seat is adequate. In the small car segment, this is what you can expect. A little bit of room, just about enough comfort. No real creature comforts at the back, but par for the course. Now, getting into the MG Comet obviously is a little trickier because of the fact that it has only 2 doors. So open this massive door and you've got a one-touch function for the front seat. So you pull this up and it slides forward and then you get inside. It's not too hard, but obviously it's not as effortless as with the Tiago and its 4 doors. Now, room at the back. I've got a good amount of knee room. I've got a good amount of headroom. So space is not really a constraint. What the drawbacks of the seat are is the fact that the floor is so high up, or the seat is actually so low down, and that means you don't have too much under thigh support. You can tuck your feet under the front seat, but that doesn't give you any more under thigh support. This is lacking. You don't have too much visibility out front as well, because this front headrest is bang in the middle of your line of sight, so you can't really look out. You have glass windows, but you can't roll them down like you can in the Tiago to get some fresh air. So you are a little cooped in and cramped in over here. This is also a strict 2-seater. So you'll notice 2 seat belts over here, not 3. So you can fit only 2 people in the back seat. Overall, for short distances, for short journeys, fitting 4 people into the Comet is not going to be an issue. But I think the Tiago's backseat is just a little more practical and a little more spacious and comfortable. When we're on the topic of space, we also have to talk about boot space. You open the boot of the Tiago EV and you can see in here, there's space for a couple of cabin bags easily. There's more than enough room for a couple of cabin bags. Now, getting to the Comet, this here is a challenge. Open the boot, there's barely any space. You can fit a backpack in here. You've got the cable charging bag, but that's about it. You can fold these seats down if you want to make more space in the back, but then you're giving up your rear seats. So boot space in this is definitely a compromise. So the next test we're putting these 2 cars up to is a race between 0 to 60 kilometers an hour. And because those are the speeds that you actually use in the cities. Those are the speeds that you're going to make quick overtakes in the city at, and those are the speeds that these cars are going to be spending most of their time at. So here goes, AC off, turn it into sport, foot on the brake, foot on the accelerator, we're good. So off the line, the Comet is actually quicker. It pulls out a small lead and then the Tiago EV catches up and completely takes over. So at the end of 60, this is actually quicker. We did the V-Box test of these cars and getting up to 60, the Tiago EV takes 5.5 seconds. The Comet takes 6.67 seconds. So the Tiago is about a second quicker. And that's because it makes more power and a little bit more torque. So when you look at the specs, the Tiago EV actually is a little more powerful than that Comet. It makes 114 Nm of torque compared to 110 Nm, and it makes 73 bhp, 74 actually, compared to 41 bhp on the Comet. So just in terms of sheer outputs, it is quicker. It's obviously heavier as well, but the way the performance is dialed in, the way the motor makes its power, and obviously the fact that it makes more power and more torque means that over a 0 to 60 run, the Tiago is actually quicker. And honestly, it feels quicker as well. When you step on the throttle in the Tiago, you feel a little bit more of a surge. The Comet also feels quick. You do feel that instantaneous torque from the Comet, but it doesn't have the same amount of shove. It can make do because it is so lightweight. It is only around 800 kilos, so it's a really light car. And because of that, those performance figures are adequate for it. But it's the Tiago that is really the quicker one here. The next challenge we're putting these cars up to is a turning radius challenge. In the Tiago EV, we lined it up on the left-hand side of the road and asked it to make a U-turn. And as you can see, it needs to take a 3-point turn. That's because the Tiago EV has a turning radius of 5.1 meters. Now, let's see what the MG Comet performs like. It's a smaller car, smaller wheelbase, narrower dimension, so obviously it's going to turn better. A turning radius of 4.2 meters means it can do a U-turn like that without having to take a 3-point turn. Okay, now first impressions of driving the Tiago EV is that it feels very conventional, and that is a good thing. It feels like a regular Tiago but with an electric drivetrain, so it feels familiar, it feels solid, it feels well built, and all of the strengths of the Tiago, those traditional strengths, have been transferred over into this car. What are those strengths? Well, first of all, the good ride and handling balance. You know, this feels like a solid car. It feels like it has strong underpinnings, robust underpinnings. It feels like it can take on Indian roads very comfortably. It has good ride quality. So over bad patches of road, it soaks it up very well. Over breakers, there's no uncomfortable thudding. You can carry a lot more speed over smaller breakers, larger breakers compared to the Comet in this car because it doesn't thud uncomfortably through them. The bigger wheels, the longer wheelbase, the wider track, all of that does make a difference to its ride handling and dynamics, and it feels more mature on the road. The seating position as well, I like it a lot more than the Comets because you're sitting lower down. It feels more inside the car rather than on top of the car. The Tiago also has height adjustable seat, which the Comet doesn't have. In terms of performance itself, there is quicker acceleration than in the Comet, so when you're trying to make overtakes, it is better. The sport mode makes a considerable difference. You can feel that quicker acceleration in sport mode, and it makes making overtaking moves even at slightly higher speeds. I'm at 60 right now, put into sport, and I step on it, 70, 80, you know, it picks up speed over 60 kilometers an hour much better than what the Comet does. So yeah, you've got adjustable regen here. You can toggle between level 0, which is pretty much coasting, and level 1, 2, 3, depending on the sort of aggressiveness of regen that you want. Right now I'm in level 3, put it down to 2. 2 feels the most natural, and that sort of adjustability gives you a lot more freedom to set up the Tiago the way you want it. Now, where the Tiago falls short of the Comet is in terms of its maneuverability in the city. So the Comet's tiny dimensions, it's really small compared to the Tiago even, and the Tiago is a small car, that give it some really good advantages. So the Tiago, you have to drive it like a normal car. It's a normal small car, so it gives you the same amount of maneuverability, and you can squeeze through similar amounts of gaps that you would squeeze through in a regular Tiago. Nothing out of the ordinary here, but there's a very real advantage in the case of the Comet in this aspect. I never thought I'd say that the Tiago is the lesser of the two in terms of just size and maneuverability in the city, but in the case of the Comet and the Tiago, it is. Okay, so driving impressions of the Comet, and straight off the bat, it's very unconventional. First of all, your seating position. You're seated right at the front of the car. You're seated fairly high up. There's no way to take it lower. The steering does have adjustability, but in terms of the seating position, you're very high up. And also, it's tiny. I can touch this door. This is literally how wide the car is. It's unbelievable. So you're in a really compact footprint. You're sitting really far in front, and that makes it a very novel driving experience, very different from traditional cars. Once you're on the go, Performance, we've already talked about. It's okay. It's not as quick as the Tiago EV, but it does the trick. There's a regen function as well, so when you get off the gas, it will start decelerating to regen. You have drive modes over here, eco, normal, sport, and they change how fast or how aggressively the Comet accelerates. Now, ride quality, how does it behave with these tiny wheels and the small wheelbase and small track? Honestly, it's not too bad. You know, I was pretty pleasantly surprised with how it deals with our roads. It's pretty planted, it's pretty stable. Smaller bumps don't seem to unsettle it. Over bigger breakers, you need to slow down, otherwise it gives you a little cut with the suspension. It sort of tops out when you go over the bump, and that's not a very pleasant feeling. So you've got to take it a little easy over speed breakers. Understand that there are limitations to the setup with the small wheels, the travel of the suspension, but 90% of the time it feels absolutely comfortable on our roads. What I think its biggest strength is, it has to be its maneuverability and its compact footprint. Compact footprint of the MG Comet is an absolute boon. It's a little bit bigger than a rickshaw, honestly, and you've seen how rickshaws can weave in and out of traffic, thread through the worst of traffic, and you can actually legit do that in the Comet. You know, if you're driving this back to back with another car through traffic, in some amount of time you will leave the other more conventional car behind, just because of the sort of gaps this can squeeze through and make progress in bad traffic. It is genuinely an important factor to consider when you're buying the Comet, because that's a very real advantage. Something that I'm still getting to grips with the Comet is the judgment of the left-hand side. Not in the way that, oh, it's too big, but oh, it's too small. So I need to remind myself that I can go a lot closer to cars on the left than what I'm used to. And that's a learning. And once you learn that, you actually free up so much space and can get into even tighter nooks and crannies. Overtaking, it requires a little bit of planning. It's not as effortless as you think. And a lot of big cities, Mumbai now, Delhi, they've got a lot of open roads, big roads, which you're doing reasonable speeds on. And when you're on such roads, you need to plan your overtakes. On smaller roads, you can take advantage of the EV drivetrain and sort of make quick progress in slower moving traffic. But the second the speeds rise above 50, 60, 65 kilometers an hour, you need to plan your overtakes a little bit. So overall, the Comet is, like I said, a very novel driving experience, a very different driving experience. There's a little bit of learning to do when you sit in this car, but more or less, it's very impressive. Some stuff that I don't like the seats. They're a little uncomfortable. This particular car's seats are also making a fair bit of noise. Let me see if I can get you to listen to it. Sounds like a bed in a cheap motel. Yeah, I don't know if the mic picked that up, but it's this squeaky, like the springs of a cheap bed, which is not very enjoyable. And because it's an EV car and it's so silent, all of that is very, very audible. Even when I turn the music on, it's audible in the cabin. So yeah, I mean, that's not very fun. These white interiors have obviously become dirty. It's the monsoons. We're in India. It was never going to be great. So white interiors, you've got to take care of them. They're not going to be easy to manage. But otherwise, yes, this is a novel, interesting driving experience. And in the urban context, it is very, very practical. Now, safety. Safety is something that's so important to talk about in this day and age. And with the Tiago, you know what you're getting. You're getting a 4-star crash-tested platform. The Tiago, it's a tried and tested platform, and that gives you a lot of confidence behind the wheels. You do get safety features in terms of dual airbags, you get ABS, you get the regular electronic safety aids. You also get an IP67 rated battery. But the most important thing here is the safety rating. 4 stars, very, very important. And that's not something you can say for the Comet. Now, in terms of just the sensations of safety, the Tiago allows you to feel very secure. Again, Because of that seating position, you're sitting inside it. You're not sitting on top of it. That makes you feel secure. You've also got a lot more in terms of frontal crash area. So where the Comet, you're sitting right in the front of the car. This, you've got a lot more of the car stretching out in front of you, and that gives you another sensation of safety. Doesn't necessarily make the car safer, but it gives you a sensation of safety, and that's nice. Even on the side, you know, the doors are a little further away from my elbows. That door is a lot further away from me. So in terms of side impact, I feel a lot safer in the Tiago, and that's an important feeling. Now the MG Comet, in terms of crash test ratings, we don't have a crash test rating. It's not been tested by GNCAP, so we don't know how it will perform in a crash test. But in terms of safety features, it does have dual airbags, it does have ABS, and it does have a tire pressure monitoring system. So it is on par for the course in terms of safety features. Now, how does it feel inside the car? Honestly, driving it does not feel as unnerving as I thought it would be. I thought driving next to trucks, buses, and all sorts of big heavy vehicles would be a little unnerving in the tiny Comet. But you're not sitting super low down. You are sitting fairly high up. It's a tall boy design. And because of that, you don't feel so nervous, I would say, inside the Comet when you're driving it. It does feel fairly secure. That said, the frontal crash area is tiny. There's not too much of space ahead of my legs. My legs are right there next to the front wheels, and in front of the front wheels, the overhangs are next to nothing. So there's no real space in front of the car, which is a little concerning. If you do get into a frontal collision, I'm not sure how the Comet will perform. At least on the looks of it, it doesn't seem super secure, you know. And that I mean relative to a conventional car, which has more of a frontal area and more crash structure in the front. Like I said, this hasn't been crash tested, so we can't say for sure how it will perform. But yes, I would recommend being a little extra careful when you're behind the wheel of the Comet, because to my mind, a front crash would not end well. In the real world, the Tiago EV proved to have a good amount of range if driven effectively, delivering around 200 to 220 kilometers on the long-range variant. The Comet EV, meanwhile, was delivering around 180 to 190 kilometers of range. This is due to the fact that the Comet has a smaller battery pack. Another big advantage of the Tiago is the fact that it can accept DC fast charging, which means on the go, you can top up the battery in just 50 minutes if you want to, but the Comet will take much longer. So what's the verdict between these two? The Tiago EV and the MG Comet, they have their very own strengths and weaknesses. The MG, it grabs so many eyeballs. It is a conversation starter. It is a really lavish interior, and it has unbeatable maneuverability in traffic. The Tiago EV, on the other hand, is a more complete car. It seats 5, it has a usable boot, it has a more powerful drivetrain, it has more range, and it can fast charge, which is critical for long distance driving. Now the question is, which of these two would you pick? Me personally, I'd go for the Tiago for two simple reasons. One, I prefer the driving position significantly. It's more inside and a lot more comfortable and more suited to my driving style. And secondly, it feels nicer to drive. When you're driving it around, the way it rides, the way it handles, the way it steers, the way it puts down its power, it feels more complete. It feels nicer as a car to drive. And for those reasons only, I would pick this. But that's not to say that the MG Comet is incompetent. It's a really competent car. And it comes down to what you want from your car. If you enjoy a car like the Comet, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, and it should be your pick. So let me know in the comments down below, between the Tiago EV and the MG Comet, which of these two would you pick? I'd love to know.